After the Soviet Union fell, the world had one unchallenged hegemon, the United States of America. They ruled the seas, the skies, the internet, and the global economy. For a long time, it seemed it would stay that way, but the world has changed. In the shadow of American bases, a new superpower has emerged. China, fast, ambitious, and determined. Today, it is quietly and systematically building its own military bases worldwide with one goal: to dethrone the United States, and if necessary, by force. An alarm is sounding in Washington. Something is approaching that America was not prepared for. I'm Factosh Root. I share mind-blowing facts, mysteries, and interesting topics. Washington, 6:17 a.m. In a windowless room, advisors are gathering. Not because of Ukraine or Taiwan, but due to something less obvious, which scares them even more. Suddenly, a base that was supposed to be managed by the Cambodian regime is getting a runway for heavy military aircraft. Bunkers, new communication systems connected to Chinese satellites, and all of this just a few kilometers from Vietnam, on the coast of the Gulf of Thailand. Officially, it's development aid. It could actually be a silent Trojan horse, giving China access to the Indo-Pacific's strategic core. In Djibouti, China has a base only 12 kilometers from the American Camp Lemonnier. And there have already been incidents, blinding American pilots with lasers, surveillance with drones. This fight isn't a hot one. It's quiet, but it started. In 2017, Sri Lanka gave China control of Hambantota port for 99 years. It couldn't repay its debt. This keeps happening in places like Zambia, Laos, and the Maldives. And Washington is already calling it not an investment, but strategic encirclement. In this video, we'll look at China's strategy of encircling the United States. Across Africa, Latin America, and the Pacific Islands, China is quietly but systematically building a network of military bases. We'll find out their exact location. Why is this causing alarm in the United States? And how close is Beijing to disrupting Washington's global dominance? Watch closely. This is a battle for the world's future. China began with a strategy of peace, building bases without conflict. In the 1980s, China saw the Soviet Union collapse due to economic issues, not military force. China learned a lesson from that. Build power, but don't reach for world domination too quickly. While the United States was fighting wars in the Middle East, China was quietly forming new alliances. In 2001, it joined the World Trade Organization. Since then, it has evolved from a toy maker to a giant building continents. In 2013, Chinese President Xi Jinping came up with a plan poetically called Belt and Road. The poetry ends with the map. Over 150 countries worldwide have signed an agreement with China. In exchange for highways, bridges, and power plants, Beijing gained access to ports, air routes, and debts. Here's the trick. Many of these countries can't repay the loans. When the payment is due, the port becomes Chinese, just like in Hambantota, Sri Lanka. The port was unprofitable and ended up in Chinese hands for 99 years. Gwadar, once a sleepy fishing town, it's now a key Chinese-Pakistani project controlling access to the Persian Gulf. The port, highways linked to China, military transport airport. And again, it's officially a civilian project, but the area is fenced off and the Chinese Navy visits regularly. The video continues right away. I just want to quickly ask you to subscribe, like, and share. In a few seconds, we'll move on. Factosh Root isn't finished yet. China has a fortress in Djibouti, bunkers, anti-aircraft batteries, double walls, and nearby, the American base camp Lemonnier. Incidents are occurring, such as Chinese soldiers blinding American pilots with lasers. What does this mean? The world is no longer us versus them. Now, they share the same space. China funded a high-speed train in Laos and took over a power plant in Zambia. In Ethiopia, the African branch of the United Nations was being built, and at the same time they were monitoring data flow. Here we come to the concept of dual use. Dual use means civilian items can become military assets during crises. Citing Qing openly discusses civil-military fusion, where any construction can be made ready for military use on command. Bases, ports, airports, agreements. China is not building an empire like in the 19th century. It's creating a network where nodes can be activated at the right time. No shots fired, no invasion. But on a global scale, Africa, the Indian Ocean, near ports and radars, Djibouti, a small African country but highly strategic. It sits right by Bab el-Mandeb, a narrow strait through which 10% of the world's trade passes. And here, in 2017, China opened its first official military base abroad. This base is more than a logistical hub. It features underground facilities, large barracks, shooting ranges, and the only Chinese aircraft carrier dock outside China. Chinese soldiers here are armed and ready to act if a conflict breaks out in the region. But Djibouti is just one of the pearls in the so-called string of pearls, a pearl necklace of Chinese influence in the Indian Ocean. This term describes a network of ports, radars, and infrastructure controlled by China from Myanmar to East Africa. Hambantota, built by Chinese companies and funded with a Chinese loan. China took control of the port for 99 years after Sri Lanka couldn't repay. And although it's officially not a military port, its waters are deep enough to accommodate destroyers and frigates. The Cube is the crown jewel. China is building it as an alternative maritime route for Chinese oil and gas, bypassing the Strait of Malacca, which can be easily blocked. It's linked to the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, which extends to western China. Gwadar serves as both a port and China's back door. In Tanzania, China planned to build the Bagamoyo port, a $10 billion project potentially useful for the military. Even though the government has temporarily suspended the project, its return is not out of the question. And that's not the only case. China has invested in ports in Mombasa, Kenya, Mozambique, Madagascar, and Sudan. Many of these projects seem too large for civilian needs, but fit military standards perfectly. Deep waters, large warehouses, underground tanks, separate communication lines. These pearls, ports, stations, and bases together form a network that covers the entire Indian Ocean. If a crisis were to occur, China could control supply routes, send ships to strategic points, and block key trade arteries for the United States and its allies. And all of this happened without a single shot being fired. The Pacific and Asia, the island chain, and the zone of control. If Africa is the base, the Pacific is the front line. This is no longer just about the economy. This is about dominating the area through which a third of the world's trade passes. And China wants to control every meter of water in this area. Beijing refers to the belt of islands, blocking its direct Pacific Ocean access as the first island chain. The islands from Japan to the Philippines, including Taiwan, are largely under American influence today. That's why China aims to bypass, divide, or control them, starting with the South China Sea. China has created more than 3,000 acres of artificial islands here using military architecture in the sea. Airports, radars, barracks, even ports for destroyers, officially for civilian purposes. Every satellite image is clear. These are military bases. Chinese bases in the South China Sea are encircled by waters claimed by Beijing as its territory. The so-called 12-mile zone, which China claims as territory to defend. International law doesn't recognize this, especially for artificial islands. That's why American destroyers sometimes enter this zone to demonstrate these are international waters and no one can arbitrarily expand their territory. Chinese jets take off at once. Air defense systems are activated and suddenly the world is just one step away from an armed incident. China has set up its own air defense identification zone in the East China Sea. In practice, every aircraft that enters this area must report its position to the Chinese military. The problem is this zone also covers parts of Japan, Taiwan, and South Korea. The video resumes shortly. Please subscribe, like, and share. We'll continue in a moment. Factos Route isn't finished yet. Along with physical expansion, there's an information war, deep fakes, hoaxes, and disinformation in the Pacific. The goal? to lower trust in the United States and reduce local governments' resistance. The Philippines, Palau, Papua, geopolitical pendulums. The Philippines have been an inconsistent partner for many years. President Duterte courted China, which took advantage by building ports and offering investments. Now Manila is shifting back to the United States and Chinese ships are being blocked. 18,000 inhabitants, but a strategic location. And China tried to gain it through soft power, investments, and intimidation. The United States replied with military deals and radar upgrades. Hidden infrastructure of war. And what can't be seen from a plane? Undersea cables. China is building dozens through companies such as Huawei Marine Networks. These cables carry more than 95% of the world's internet. If a conflict were to occur, cyber paralysis would be the first step. In the Pacific, Zhongguo is shaping geography, making the sea a fortress, not just playing geopolitics. If this island chain is completed, the United States won't even be able to reach Taiwan. Latin America and the Caribbean are close to the United States, which has long been seen as the dominant power in the region. The Monroe Doctrine was clear, no foreign powers here, yet today even Chinese flags are showing up. Cuba, a radar in the Caribbean. In 2023, reports leaked that China had built a spy base in Cuba, only 200 kilometers from Florida, close enough to intercept American signals, mobile networks, and government communications. The facility uses technologies for so-called signals intelligence or signal intelligence, is intercepting transmissions from satellites, undersea cables, and military communications. Allegedly, it can also monitor communications from the Pentagon. No power has been this close to the United States mainland since the Soviet Union. Nicaragua, a new canal, new threats. For years, there has been talk of a Chinese project to build a deeper, more controlled canal through Nicaragua, parallel to Panama. The project may be stagnant, but the contracts and property rights are still valid. And if China managed to revive the canal, it would gain strategic control over another major global transport artery. Interesting. Companies connected to the Chinese government have bought tens of thousands of hectares in the region, including near the American partner Costa Rica. Argentina, a station with a view of space. In Argentine Patagonia, there is a large Chinese satellite complex built under the pretext of space research. It's controlled by the Chinese military, with Argentina having no entry rights. The contract is for 50 years. The station can track and jam satellites and could be used as a weapon in an orbital conflict. China's soft power in Latin America. China also operates discreetly in the region, investing in universities, hospitals, television channels, funding police training, providing security software, and surveillance technologies. Many public institutions in Bolivia, Venezuela, and Ecuador use Chinese equipment. This also means exporting the Chinese style of control. The United States is responding but delayed. Washington is renewing regional diplomatic ties, but many governments have already accepted Chinese loans, systems, and dependencies. China now has bases beyond Asia, with a presence in the Caribbean and South America. The question is, how will America react when the chessboard is in its own backyard? Washington responds as the chess game continues. The United States isn't a passive spectator. They know China's actions and make their own moves. Washington operates over 750 military bases worldwide. Over 60,000 American soldiers are stationed in Japan, and hypersonic weapon defense systems are being built on Guam. New bases are being established in the Philippines. The United States of America relies on partnerships. Australia United, Kingdom United States, a military technological alliance with Australia and Britain. Quadrilateral Security Dialogue is a coalition of the United States of America, India, Japan, and Australia. The aim is to contain China peacefully, but stay prepared. Australia, United Kingdom, United States will develop new stealth submarines and a joint satellite monitoring system for the Indo-Pacific. United States weapons are nearing China as China moves closer to the United States, and the conflict's third dimension, a hidden race, unfolds unseen. The United States and China are spending billions on artificial intelligence combat systems, orbital weapons, and quantum communication. The American Space Force is not just marketing. It's a response to Chinese anti-satellite weapons, which have already destroyed their own satellites during tests. Hackers from both sides are testing defenses. In 2021, Chinese actors breached American infrastructure systems. A silent economic battle is underway, including power plants as the United States blocks high-tech chip exports to China. Beijing is investing in development, leading to a technological split that could worsen. Today, the world is a chessboard, and every port, base, radar, and cable is a pawn that can turn into a queen. Washington is under pressure. China isn't approaching, it's already at the table. This isn't a game about oil. This is a game for dominance over the entire planet. So far, without gunshots, without invasions, but with consequences for every one of us. Let Factosh Root know in the comments whether you think China will dethrone the United States of America or if America will keep its position as the top superpower. Factosh Root is signing off, but mysteries never sleep. See you soon. Subscribe so you don't miss more mysteries.